Very good. So we'll move on to our announcements, and as requested by a number of council members to have a city manager update on the Hughes Stadium property. Darren?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And Mike Beckstead is here. Mike, formerly our Chief Financial Officer, Senior Advisor now to the City Manager, and I think this is his last gig in front of the Fort Collins City Council. Mike's
I think it is, yes.
Unless I can figure out a way to twist his arm and keep him. But I think this time he said no, Mayor and Council, and I think he means it. So this might be your last time with him. Back in late July, August, Council asked me to work with with Dr. Frank in the CSU system to talk about the Hughes Stadium site. And at that time, that direction was either, I think, an all-out purchase of the site or partial purchase, but to see if there's a potential collaboration. Mike and I have met with Dr. Frank several times. I've had many phone calls and conversations with him. And to be candid with you, I'm very disappointed that those conversations didn't materialize into a win-win situation for Colorado State and the city of Fort Collins and the community of Fort Collins. You know, we did talk about a complete purchase of the site. We talked about partial purchases of the site. Mike's going to probably talk about this in some detail, but we also talked about, you know, what are the existing conditions of the site? What are the existing regulations as it results of separators from the open space, permanent easement that we own for the rodeo detention pond, some of the limitations relating to the deconstruction of the stadium. And when you look at all of those factors, the site has some pretty significant limitations. At one point during this conversation over the last couple of months, I will tell you, I honestly believe that we had a situation where I was going to be able to bring forward a transaction to you as council, because I know that was important to many of you. And so therein lies my disappointment. I believe that we had a legitimate, well-informed offer on the table. The reason why we're here this evening, I think, before I turn it over to Mike, is I know that there's been some misinformation about the city's, you know, lowball offer or maybe what was put on the table. And I know council has received some questions about that. So I think the best way to respond to that is to share with council what actually was the sort of the primary components of the offer that we made. So Mayor and Council, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Beckstead. Mike was a critical part of these conversations with me. And Mike, I'm thankful for your work as always. And if you can go ahead and start sharing, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I've got the share on, and presuming everybody can see that. Is that true?
Mike, we can see it, yes.
Okay, thanks. So just kind of talking through this, want to just first start with kind of the conceptual proposal that Darren and I spoke about. It took bits and pieces of what had previously been talked about, but it was really around let's acquire the entire site. But CSU, we thought, would want to retain 15 acres so that they could do what they've been calling the community benefits. One of those is to build 170 affordable housing units for CSU staff and faculty. That was an important priority of theirs. And the other is to partner with others in the community to build a child care facility and a medical facility. And we thought 15 acres would be appropriate for that, with the city then acquiring the remaining 150 acres. And our thinking was the city could either build or partner to build other community affordable housing units in addition to the 170 that CSU is going to build, with the unit count TBD. We also talked about a transit connection so that there's an easy way for people in this development to get to CSU or to get into the transit system, with the remaining property being open space, not necessarily natural areas because of the detention ponds that Darren mentioned earlier, but I'll just call it open space at this stage. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but there's some comparisons on this slide that I'm going to come back to in a minute. The first is the base price that CSU had negotiated with Lennar was $10 million for the property. There was a $4 million incentive option with that. I don't know the details or particulars of that. I don't know what's required for CSU to realize that additional $4 million, but because it was uncertain, we left it out of this analysis and this discussion. So total price was $10 million. Second, there's about a $3.6 million water credit associated with this property. There were 2 4-inch lines that fed into it based on the prior use of the water, the prior plant investment fees that have been paid. That 3.6 was included inside of that $10 million Lennar acquisition price. That's important. The third piece, and Darren alluded to this as well, that of the 165 acres in discussion, 49 of those acres are considered undevelopable. 30 of those are the detention pond in the southeast corner. There's an estimated 12 acres necessary on the west side of the property to buffer up against the Maxwell natural areas. And then there's a 7-acre site where the stadium used to be, where the foundation of that stadium is still underground. It's buried under 8 to 10 feet of dirt, and that would be difficult to develop. So as Darren said, there's not 165 acres that can all be developed in this property. So that being the basis, what we did is we tried to target how close could we get to $10 million and still stay within what we considered to be reasonable prices, working both with natural areas and with our real estate department. So the first thing we did was talk about the value of what CSU would retain in those 15 acres. So if you use the value that Lennar was going to give without water to CSU, that's how we valued the $758,000 for the 15 acres that CSU would keep. Second thing we did, working with utilities, is if they're going to build 170 affordable housing units and then have a couple of other facilities, how much water, what would the plan investment fees be, and how much of that 3.6 water credit should stay with CSU? We estimated that at $1,350,000. So there's a value to CSU of what they would retain of $2.1 million. Then working with our real estate group, we estimated that the undevelopable land has a value of about $10,000 and that the developable with the water has a value of about $60,000. So based on that, based on 101 developable acres and 49 undevelopable acres, that comes out to $6.55 million. And so that was the proposal we talked about to see how close we could get to the $10 million. And you can see from this, we were only at an 87% with the CSU value retained in the city proposal. We added another $4,000 an acre or a $600,000 incentive. Our motivation there was to help entice a willing seller. And so our proposal to CSU measured against the $10 million was about 93% of that, because the first objective that CSU shared with us was their fiscal responsibility to their stakeholders and the citizens of Colorado. So that was our target. And as Darren said, when we first reviewed this with CSU, I think we both came away fairly optimistic that it was well received and it was close to the mark. As you've read, there's conversation of about a $7 million gap. That $7 million gap is really made up of that $4 million of additional incentive income. And again, I don't know the details of it. It also does not include this $2.1 million of CSU value. That together is about $6 million of that $7 million gap that's been talked about. So that was our proposal. Those are the numbers behind it. And with that, I'll just stand down and what questions and conversation can we have?
Thank you, Mike. Ross?
Yeah, thanks. And first of all, thank you very much to, there were a large number of city staff members who were involved in this, from our development review and planning departments, from our parks departments, from our natural areas departments, from the city manager's office, Mike Beckstead as a special resource, and good to hear from you, Mike, by the way. So, you know, I really appreciate that staff took this idea seriously and very seriously. And I think that your methodology is sound. It's extremely disappointing that Tony Frank didn't see how close I think we really were to the fair value of that land. I think there's a difference between fiduciary responsibility that he cites and irresponsible optimism, in my opinion, of how much they're going to benefit from this property. The idea that they're going to somehow reap a huge windfall seems unlikely to me. And the idea that they're going to achieve some sort of missing middle housing without any regulatory options for it seems unlikely to me. It feels like CSU is desperate for money after a $220 million boondoggle at the stadium. And that desperation has led them to a very poor choice. I don't believe, Mr. City Manager, is it correct? At no point did you say, this is our final offer, take it or leave it.
No, I didn't. I mean, we didn't say that specifically. In fact, I think even as last week I said, you know, if something changes before going to your board, please let me know.
Right. And I guess if I'm wrong about CSU, we can probably still keep talking, but unfortunately, I don't think we're wrong. It seems like they're bound and determined to pursue their quest, tilting at the windmills of this $4 million extra dollars. And, you know, this isn't how I always thought negotiations went. I thought negotiations went particularly between open public entities, that we make an assessment of what we think the fair value is, and then we have a discussion about what did we miss? Are there intangibles that we could then, you know, attach goodwill or money to and keep talking? And instead, CSU decided to go, I guess, talk to their lawyers and firm up their position. It's just really terribly disappointing. And I don't think that, I think that the effort that our staff put in would have supported an ongoing conversation and a fantastic partnership. Tremendously unfortunate. Colorado State really could have used a community-friendly publicity win here, and they chose to reject it. So I could go on, probably will say more things that I regret, but I'm just, I guess, disappointed is an understatement. Livid is probably closer to the truth. And I guess we'll see how this goes forward, but it's frankly a slap in the face to the city council and a slap in the face to the voters and taxpayers of Fort Collins.
Yeah, I'll provide a little different perspective. So I actually watched the Board of Governors meeting, only the real estate portion, which is a Friday afternoon, and immediately went into in executive session, CSU Board of Governors, and then when they came out, there was a presentation by Dr. Frank and then a board discussion. And the thing that struck me about the presentation that Dr. Frank made, and I should say that also this wasn't exclusive by any means. It was a public streaming of the Board of Governor meeting, and any community member could watch it if they so desired. And they can, I believe, still do it online if they'd like to. But to watch the presentation, I was struck by the fact of how much Dr. Frank cited our city plan in the proposal that was being made. and in terms of affordable housing and the commitment there, and for 80% AMI, and also some single detached dwelling units with that commitment to the open space, to quality project and development. But furthermore, related to commitment to our transit requirements, and with the west end of the what will be the bus rapid transit, but actually connecting it into this development, the commitment to having transit, and how that's for the residents that would live in this particular development, and how important that would be to achieving not only CSU sustainability goals, which they are the highest rated green university according to the evaluation metrics, but they're committed to the city's climate action goals as well. The commitment to daycare, and not only daycare in terms of the service, but throughout all of the proposals was, and this is where I think it's lost, and it's more, I think, than the intangibles, but it's related to the mission of the university. And so students' involvement, faculty engaged in the medical facilities as well. And so it wasn't so much about trying to meet a sales price as it was in listening to it, meeting our city plan objectives, and also the mission of Colorado State University. So, I think the decision is unfortunate as well. I agree with Ross on that, and I think that the city is now not involved. The state entity. I think people that have a concern about this. There's the Board of Governors, which are appointed by the governor. The state attorney general is very much would be involved in this as well, and I think with, again, it was more than just a sales price. So relating to the petition, the citizen petition out there, it suggests that the city has to buy the land. Well, you need to have a willing seller to do that, and what I heard is not. There isn't a willing seller. In fact, it drives the price to infinite. And in relating to our previous conversation regarding the city budget, I don't believe we have infinite in our budget for purchase of a property, or any property for that matter. I heard a commitment to open space and that sort of thing. But I think the citizen petition, if they're truly honest, it's not necessarily about open space. I think it's just about stopping a development. As it relates to the open space, this is a 60-acre parking lot. If you take a foot of that, over 60 acres or 60 acre feet of soil that would need to be removed and reclaimed, it's not just the sales price that's related to creating open space. It would also be commensurate with at least as much of any sale as what it would take to recover it for a truly natural area and not just an open parking lot. So, I was struck by the sincerity that CSU, and I listened to the conversation of the Board of Governors, and it was a unanimous vote in support of the action going forward. I think it's unfortunate that that it's not in a partnership with the city, but in listening to it, and I encourage everyone to go listen to it for yourself. But I think it was a sincere approach that they're pursuing, and I just wanted to provide my observations for what I saw at the Board of Governors meeting. Other council members? Well, Mike, thank you. We'll invite you back, invite the band back sometime for a reunion, but appreciate that.
I look forward to it when we can all get together again.
Okay. Is there any other council member announcements that like to be made?